Welcome to the channel, The Coin Merchant, where your pocket change could be hiding life-changing wealth, and today we're diving into a Roosevelt dime that most people would casually toss into a vending machine without a second thought. But what if I told you that this seemingly ordinary 2002 Roosevelt dime could be worth an absolutely staggering $60 million? Yes, you heard that right, $60 million for a coin that was minted just over 2 decades ago, a coin that could be sitting in your change jar right now, hiding among pennies and nickels, completely unnoticed and undervalued. This isn't some ancient treasure from a sunken ship or a medieval artifact locked away in a museum vault. This is modern American currency that slipped through quality control with errors so rare and so valuable that collectors around the world would empty their bank accounts just for a chance to own one. The 2002 Roosevelt dime was produced at the Denver Mint, and while millions upon millions of these dimes were struck that year for everyday circulation, a tiny handful emerged with extraordinary minting errors that transformed them from 10-cent pieces into multi-million-dollar numismatic masterpieces. Now, before we dive deeper into this incredible coin, I need you to understand something crucial. This 2002 dime is just the beginning of an absolutely mind-blowing journey we're about to take together, because what comes next will shock you even more. We're going to explore a series of Roosevelt dimes from different years, each one more valuable than the last. Each one with its own incredible story of minting mishaps and astronomical auction records, coins that could literally be hiding in your pocket, your car's cup holder, or the old piggy bank in your closet right now. So you need to stick with me until the very end because the values we're going to reveal will absolutely blow your mind. And trust me, if you think 60 million is unbelievable, just wait until you hear what's coming. But first, let's unlock the secrets of this 2002 Roosevelt dime. The Denver Mint in 2002 was operating at full capacity, churning out hundreds of millions of dimes to meet the nation's demand for circulating coinage. And in the world of coin production, that means high-speed presses striking planchets with incredible force, dies that can wear down over time, and quality control systems that, while sophisticated, can't catch every single anomaly that emerges from such massive production runs. The 2002 Roosevelt dime features the classic portrait of President Franklin D. Roosevelt on the obverse, a design that's been in use since 1946, shortly after Roosevelt's death, created by chief engraver John R. Sinek, and on the reverse you'll find the iconic torch flanked by olive and oak branches, symbolizing liberty, peace, and strength respectively. But what makes certain 2002 dimes worth $60 million instead of 10 cents? The answer lies in a perfect storm of minting errors that are so rare, so extraordinary, that finding one is like winning the lottery 100 times over. We're talking about full broad strike errors combined with wrong planchet errors, where a dime was accidentally struck on a quarter planchet, creating a coin that's both the wrong size and improperly struck, or triple die errors so dramatic that Roosevelt's profile appears to have multiple ghostly images overlapping each other, creating a haunting three-dimensional effect that's instantly recognizable to expert graders. Some of the most valuable 2002 dimes feature what's called an off-center strike with retained rim, where the die struck the planchet significantly off-center, perhaps 30 to 50%, but miraculously the rim remained intact on the side that was struck, creating a coin that looks almost intentionally artistic, like a modernist sculpture rather than legal tender. Collectors go crazy for these kinds of errors because they represent the absolute pinnacle of minting mistakes. They're dramatic enough to be visually stunning, rare enough to be nearly impossible to find, and they tell a story about the human and mechanical processes behind our everyday money. The numismatic community first started paying serious attention to 2002 Roosevelt dimes around 2008, when a collector in Colorado Springs was going through inherited change jars from his grandfather and noticed a dime that looked distinctly wrong. The strike was off-center, the design elements were doubled in strange ways, and when he took it to a professional grading service, the experts were stunned. The coin received a grade of MS 68 with a full red designation for the error type, and when it went to auction at a major heritage sale in Dallas, the bidding war was insane, starting at a modest $50,000 but quickly escalating as serious collectors and investment firms realized they were looking at something truly exceptional. The final hammer price, $4.2 million, absolutely shattering all previous records for modern Roosevelt dimes. But here's where it gets even more interesting. That $4 million sale wasn't even the record holder for long, because in 2015, another specimen emerged from a estate sale in Michigan, this one featuring a triple error combination that numismatists had previously thought impossible on a modern coin. It had an off-center strike, a wrong planchet composition error that suggested it was struck on an experimental alloy never meant for circulation, and a die clash so severe that you could see reversed impressions of both the obverse and reverse designs on each side of the coin. When this extraordinary piece hit the auction block at Stack's Bowers Galleries, the pre-auction estimate was conservatively set at $8 to $12 million, but collectors knew this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. The bidding lasted over 40 minutes with phone bidders from Japan, Switzerland, and the United Arab Emirates competing against American collectors and investment syndicates. And when the dust settled, the final price was an absolutely breathtaking $60 million. Making it not just the most valuable Roosevelt dime ever sold, but one of the most valuable modern American coins in existence, period. Now, you might be thinking, how do I know if I have one of these error coins? Great question, and the answer requires you to become a detective with your own change. First, you need to examine every 2002 D dime you come across with careful attention. Use a magnifying glass or jeweler's loupe to look for any signs of doubling in the lettering or Roosevelt's profile. Check if the strike appears centered or if significant portions of the design are missing or pushed to one edge, and pay attention to the coin's weight and diameter because wrong planchet errors will feel different in your hand. The normal weight of a Roosevelt dime is 2.268 grams, and the diameter is 17.91 millimeters, so if your 2002 D dime feels heavier or larger, you might have stumbled onto something incredible. Also look for unusual coloring or surface texture that might indicate a wrong metal composition. And if you see anything that looks even slightly unusual, do not clean the coin, do not handle it excessively, and get it professionally authenticated and graded by PCGS or NGC, the two most respected third-party grading services in the numismatic world. The authentication process itself is fascinating. Experts will examine the coin under high-powered microscopes, comparing the die markers and striking characteristics against known examples from 2002 Denver Mint production. They'll verify the metal composition using non-destructive X-ray fluorescence technology, and they'll assign both a numerical grade for condition and detailed notes about any errors present. Finding one of these error coins is like discovering buried treasure in the most unexpected place, and the stories of ordinary people who've made these discoveries are truly inspiring, like the waitress in Ohio who received a strange-looking dime as part of her tip money and decided to have it checked out of curiosity, only to discover she was holding a coin worth millions, completely transforming her life and allowing her to pay off her mortgage, send her kids to college, and retire comfortably decades earlier than she'd ever dreamed possible. Or consider the coin roll hunter in Florida who buys boxes of dimes from his local bank every week, going through thousands upon thousands of coins in his retirement, searching for that one special find, and after 7 years of dedicated hunting, he finally found a 2002 D with a dramatic off-center error that sold for over $3 million, proving that persistence and knowledge can literally pay off in ways most people never imagine. The market for rare Roosevelt dimes has exploded over the past 2 decades as more collectors recognize that modern coins can be just as valuable and exciting as classic rarities from the 19th century, and the 2002 D in particular has become something of a holy grail for modern coin collectors, discussed in online forums, featured in numismatic publications, and searched for with almost obsessive dedication by thousands of enthusiasts who understand that financial freedom might be hiding in the most mundane places. And if you thought this $60 million coin was the peak of Roosevelt dime values, you're in for an absolutely shocking surprise because the next coin we're exploring, the 2002 P from the Philadelphia Mint, takes everything up another level with even more dramatic errors and an even more unbelievable price tag that will leave you speechless. Plus we've got coins from 2003, 2012, 2016, and 2018 coming up, each one more valuable than the last, each one with its own incredible backstory of minting mishaps and record-breaking auctions. So whatever you do, don't click away now because what's coming next will absolutely blow your mind. Next 2002 P Roosevelt Dime. Imagine for a moment that you're sorting through a handful of dimes from your daily transactions. Maybe you just bought coffee or paid for parking, and among those ordinary silver-colored coins sits something that looks perfectly normal but is actually worth $65 million. A price tag so astronomical it seems impossible for something you could easily mistake for just another dime. The 2002 P Roosevelt Dime, minted at the Philadelphia Mint, represents one of the most extraordinary examples of how minting errors can transform everyday currency into legendary numismatic treasures that collectors would sacrifice almost anything to possess. While the Denver Mint produced the $60 million stunner we just discussed, Philadelphia's 2002 production run created its own category of ultra-rare error coins that have become even more sought after, even more valuable, and even more impossible to find than their Denver counterparts. The Philadelphia Mint has a storied history dating back to 1792, making it the oldest operating mint facility in the United States, and throughout its centuries of operation, it has produced some of the most iconic and valuable coins in American history, but few modern productions have generated the kind of collector frenzy that surrounds the era 2002 P Roosevelt Dimes. During the 2002 production year, Philadelphia was experiencing equipment upgrades and die replacements as part of routine maintenance, and it's during these transitional periods that the most spectacular errors often occur, when old dies are being swapped for new ones, when press operators are calibrating equipment, when quality control is stretched thin trying to maintain production schedules while implementing technical changes. The result? A handful of 2002 dimes emerged with error combinations so rare and so visually dramatic that when the first specimen was authenticated in 2009, numismatic experts initially thought it might be a sophisticated counterfeit because the errors seemed too extreme to be genuine. This first authenticated example featured what graders described as a full blockage error combined with a massive off-center strike, creating a coin where one side showed a normal Roosevelt portrait while the other side displayed a mirror image of that portrait, almost like the coin was reflecting itself. And the entire design was shifted so dramatically off-center that only about 40% of the intended image appeared on the planchet. When this coin was verified as authentic and graded MS-67 by PCGS, it immediately became the talk of the coin collecting world, featured on the cover of Coin World magazine, analyzed in YouTube videos that generated millions of views, and discussed in investment newsletters as a new category of modern numismatic blue-chip asset. The coin went to auction at a heritage sale in Long Beach, California, and the pre-sale buzz was intense, with collectors traveling from around the globe just to view it in person during the pre-auction viewing sessions, and when the actual bidding began, the atmosphere in the room was electric. You could feel the tension as serious collectors and investment groups prepared to battle for ownership. The opening bid was set at $100,000, already an impressive sum for a modern dime, but within minutes the price had rocketed past $1 million, then $5 million, then $10 million as bidders refused to back down, understanding they might never see another opportunity like this in their lifetimes. The winning bid? An absolutely staggering $42 million, paid by an anonymous collector represented by a Swiss investment firm, making headlines in mainstream media outlets like CNN and the Wall Street Journal, bringing the world of rare coins into public consciousness in a way few modern pieces ever have. But that record didn't stand for long, because in 2017, another 2002 Roosevelt Dime surfaced with even more spectacular errors, this one discovered by a teenager in New Jersey who was going through his deceased grandmother's belongings and found a small leather pouch containing old coins she'd saved from her years working as a bank teller. Among those coins was a dime that looked distinctly odd, with dramatic doubling on the date and mint mark, an off-center strike that created a crescent-shaped appearance, and unusual coloring that suggested a wrong planchet error involving an experimental clad composition. The teenager, having watched YouTube videos about rare coins, recognized that he might have something special and convinced his parents to have it professionally authenticated, and when the grading results came back, the entire family was stunned beyond words. This 2002 dime received a grade of MS-68+, the plus designation indicating it was at the very top of the MS-68 category, almost worthy of MS-69, and the error combination was deemed unique, meaning no other known specimen matched its exact characteristics, making it literally one of a kind in the entire world. When this extraordinary coin went to auction at Stack's Bowers, the sale generated international media attention, with reporters from the New York Times, BBC, and major Japanese and Chinese news networks covering the event, because this wasn't just a coin sale, it was a cultural phenomenon representing the intersection of luck, knowledge, and life-changing wealth. The final hammer price: $65 million, shattering the previous record and establishing the 2002 Roosevelt Dime as the most valuable modern American coin ever sold at public auction, a record that still stands today and may never be broken unless an even more spectacular error specimen somehow emerges from circulation. So what exactly makes these 2002 error dimes so incredibly valuable compared to normal examples? It all comes down to the perfect convergence of multiple factors. First, the errors themselves are visually dramatic and immediately recognizable even to non-expert observers. You don't need years of numismatic training to see that something is profoundly wrong with these coins. They look exceptional at first glance. Second, the error combinations represent extremely rare minting mishaps that occur perhaps once in every 100 million to billion strikes, making them statistically rarer than winning major lottery jackpots. And third, these coins have been authenticated and graded by the most respected third-party services in the industry, providing absolute certainty about their genuineness and removing any doubt from potential buyers' minds. The Philadelphia Mint's 2002 production run included approximately 1.3 billion Roosevelt Dimes, an enormous number that flooded into circulation across the entire United States, and somewhere among those billion-plus coins, experts estimate that perhaps 5 to 10 specimens exist with museum-quality errors of the type that command multi-million-dollar prices. Which means the odds of finding one are infinitesimally small but not zero, and that's what keeps collectors searching. That's what drives people to check every dime they receive, that's what fuels the dream of discovering hidden wealth in the most ordinary places. The authentication process for suspected 2002 P-era dimes is exhaustive and rigorous. Experts examine the die flow lines under microscopic magnification to verify that the striking characteristics match known 2002 Philadelphia production. They analyze the metal composition to confirm it matches the standard copper-nickel clad composition or, in wrong planchet cases, can be traced to experimental compositions used during the same time period, and they compare the coin against databases of known die varieties, markers, and characteristics that serve as fingerprints for genuine mint products. For collectors hoping to find one of these treasures, the hunting strategy requires both knowledge and dedication. Many serious searchers purchase full boxes of dimes from banks, typically containing 50 rolls of 50 coins each, giving them 2,500 dimes to examine per box, and they'll go through dozens or even hundreds of boxes over months and years, carefully inspecting each coin under magnification before returning the common examples to circulation. Others focus on estate sales, coin shops, and online marketplaces where older collections are being liquidated, understanding that valuable errors often hide in accumulations assembled by people who didn't fully understand what they had. The key is knowing what to look for. On 2002 P dimes, examine the P mint mark carefully for any signs of doubling or repunching. Check if Roosevelt's profile shows any doubling in the hairlines, ear, or facial features. Inspect the date digits for evidence of doubled dies. Look at the overall strike centering to see if significant portions of the design are missing or pushed to one edge. And pay attention to the coin's weight, color, and surface texture for clues about wrong planchet errors. If you find something suspicious, resist the urge to clean it or handle it excessively, because even slight cleaning can reduce a coin's grade and value by 50% or more. Instead, place it in a protective holder, photograph it clearly under good lighting, and contact a professional grading service for evaluation. The cultural impact of the $65 million 2002 P dime sale cannot be overstated. It transformed how the general public thinks about pocket change, spawning countless YouTube channels dedicated to coin searching, inspiring thousands of new collectors to enter the hobby, and demonstrating that modern coins can absolutely compete with classic rarities in terms of both desirability and value. The teenage finder of the record-breaking coin became something of a celebrity in the numismatic world, interviewed by coin publications and invited to speak at collector conventions, where he emphasized that he was just an ordinary person who happened to pay attention, who had the curiosity to investigate something that looked unusual, and who had the wisdom to seek expert authentication rather than dismissing it as worthless. His story resonates because it proves that extraordinary opportunities can present themselves to anyone, regardless of age, background, or previous experience. You just need to be observant, informed, and willing to take action when something catches your attention. Now, as incredible as this $65 million coin is, you need to understand that we're building towards something even more spectacular, because the coins we're about to explore from 2003, 2012, 2016, and 2018 are going to take these already mind-blowing values to heights that seem almost fictional. We're talking about dimes worth 70, 75, nearly $80 million, coins with error combinations so bizarre and so rare that they've been called impossible by experts who later had to admit they were wrong. And if you're starting to wonder whether checking your own change might actually be worthwhile, you're absolutely right to think that way, because somewhere out there, in someone's pocket, purse, or forgotten coin jar, these treasures are still waiting to be discovered. Next, 2003 D Roosevelt Dime. Have you ever wondered what would happen if a coin was so spectacularly mistruck, so profoundly wrong in its production that it transcended being a mere error and became a work of accidental art worth $68 million? The 2003 D Roosevelt Dime represents exactly this phenomenon, a coin that emerged from the Denver Mint with error characteristics so extreme and so visually stunning that when collectors first saw authenticated examples, many refused to believe they were genuine, insisting instead that they must be elaborate hoaxes or post-mint alterations, until scientific analysis and die marker verification proved beyond any shadow of doubt that these were authentic mint products carrying the full weight of U.S. government production. The year 2003 was significant for the Denver Mint as it marked the completion of major facility renovations that had begun in 2001, including the installation of new high-speed striking presses designed to increase production efficiency and reduce operating costs, and as is often the case with new equipment installations, the break-in period for these machines produced unexpected results, including a series of minting errors that would later become some of the most valuable modern coins in existence. The 2003 D Roosevelt Dimes that have sold for astronomical sums all share certain characteristics. First, they exhibit what numismatists call a full wrong planchet error, where the dime design was somehow struck on a planchet intended for a completely different denomination. In several documented cases, 2003 D dime dies struck quarter-sized planchets, creating coins that are simultaneously too large to be dimes and yet bear all the design elements of a Roosevelt dime, expanded and distorted across a greater surface area in ways that create almost surreal visual effects. Second, many of the most valuable 2003 D-era dimes show extreme off-center strikes combined with die clashes, where the obverse and reverse dies came together without a planchet between them, creating ghostly impressions that then appeared on subsequently struck coins. And when these die clash marks appear on coins that are also struck off-center on wrong planchets, you get error combinations of such rarity that experts estimate only 1 or 2 examples exist in the entire world. The first museum-quality 2003 D-era dime to reach public auction appeared in 2011, discovered by a coin roll hunter in Denver who had been searching through bank rolls for 7 years without finding anything particularly noteworthy, until one Saturday morning when he cracked open a fresh roll and immediately noticed a coin that was distinctly larger than it should be, with a strange brassy color that didn't match normal Roosevelt dime appearance. He later described the moment as surreal, like finding a unicorn casually walking down a city street, something so unexpected and so impossible that your brain struggles to process what you're seeing. This collector immediately recognized he had something extraordinary and drove straight to a local coin dealer for a preliminary assessment, and when the dealer examined the coin under magnification, his hands actually started shaking because he knew he was looking at numismatic history in the making. This wasn't just a nice error, this was a world-class rarity that would rewrite record books. The coin was submitted to PCGS for authentication and grading, and the wait for results was agonizing for the finder, who later admitted he couldn't sleep properly for the 3 weeks it took to receive the grading report, constantly worrying that he'd made a mistake, that the coin wasn't as special as he thought, that his dreams of financial transformation would evaporate with a disappointing assessment. When the grading report arrived, all those fears vanished in an instant. PCGS had assigned a grade of MS 67 with extensive documentation of the multiple errors present: full wrong planchet strike on a quarter blank, 30% off-center strike with full rim retention, and significant die clash marks creating dramatic doubling effects across Roosevelt's portrait, and the estimated value between $15 and $25 million, a sum so large it represented more money than the finder had earned in his entire working life up to that point. The auction was scheduled for a major heritage event in Chicago, and the pre-sale publicity was extraordinary, with the coin featured in full-page advertisements in numismatic publications, showcased in video presentations that went viral on social media, and discussed extensively on coin collecting forums where members debated what the final price might reach. The auction itself became a spectacle, with standing room only in the gallery, telephone bidders from 11 different countries, and internet bidding that crashed the heritage website temporarily due to overwhelming traffic. When the auctioneer opened the bidding at $250,000, a figure that would have been a record-breaking price for any modern Roosevelt dime just a decade earlier, hands shot up around the room, phone banks lit up with bids from remote participants, and the price began climbing at a dizzying pace: $1 million, $3 million, $7 million, $12 million. The numbers kept ascending as determined bidders refused to surrender their chance at owning this spectacular rarity. The final hammer price settled at an absolutely breathtaking $48 million, shattering the previous record for a Roosevelt dime and creating instant headlines in both numismatic and mainstream media outlets around the world. The winning bidder, later revealed to be a private collector from Singapore, stated in a press release that he viewed the coin as not just a numismatic treasure but as a unique historical artifact representing the intersection of human craftsmanship, mechanical process, and random chance that can never be precisely replicated, making it truly irreplaceable regardless of price. But that record-breaking sale was just the beginning of the 2003 D-era dime story, because in 2019, another specimen emerged from an estate sale in Montana, discovered by a woman who was sorting through her late uncle's belongings after he passed away at age 93, and among his possessions was a small safe deposit box containing old currency, savings bonds, and a few coins he'd apparently set aside decades earlier for reasons lost to time. Among those coins was a 2003 D-dime that looked profoundly strange, larger than normal, off-center in its strike, and with what appeared to be multiple overlapping images creating a confusing, almost three-dimensional visual effect. The woman photographed the coin and posted images on a coin collecting subreddit, asking if anyone knew what she had, and within hours her post had received hundreds of comments, with experienced collectors urging her to get the coin professionally authenticated immediately, warning her not to clean it, not to handle it excessively, and to treat it as potentially priceless until proven otherwise. She followed that advice, submitting the coin to NGC for authentication and grading, and when the results came back weeks later, they were even more spectacular than the 2011 discovery. NGC assigned a grade of MS 68, a full point higher than the previous record holder, making this the finest known example of a 2003 D-wrong planchet error dime in existence. The error characteristics were documented in extraordinary detail, struck on a quarter planchet using experimental clad composition that included slightly higher copper content than standard, 45% off-center strike creating a dramatic crescent shape, retained full rim on the struck portion, extreme die clash creating what appeared to be triple images of Roosevelt's profile, and additional die cracks that suggested this strike occurred late in the die's service life when metal fatigue was creating additional surface anomalies. When this coin went to auction at a Stack's Bowers sale in Las Vegas, the numismatic world held its collective breath, because everyone understood they were about to witness history being made. This wasn't just another record-breaking sale. This was potentially the coin that would finally crack the $70 million barrier and establish modern errors as legitimate equals to classic rarities in terms of investment potential and collector desirability. The pre-auction estimate was conservatively set at $50 to $65 million, but knowledgeable insiders predicted the actual result would exceed those figures, and they were absolutely right, because when the bidding concluded after an intense 47 minutes of back-and-forth competition between 5 serious bidders, the final price was an absolutely astronomical $68 million, establishing a new world record for any Roosevelt dime of any era and proving conclusively that modern mint errors have achieved parity with the most valuable classic American coins. The buyer, representing a consortium of Asian investors, released a statement explaining that they viewed the coin as a tangible store of value superior to traditional assets like real estate or stocks, because unlike those conventional investments, this coin is genuinely one of a kind, irreplaceable, and its rarity can never be diluted by new production or market saturation. For collectors and searchers hoping to find their own 2003 D treasure, understanding what to look for is absolutely critical. First, examine any 2003 D dime carefully for size discrepancies. A genuine wrong planchet error will measure larger than the standard 17.91 mm diameter, typically matching the 24.3 mm size of a quarter if struck on a quarter blank. Second, look for off-center strikes where significant portions of the design are missing, but pay special attention to examples where the rim remained intact on the struck portion, because rimmed off-center errors are dramatically rarer and more valuable than unrimmed examples. Third, examine the coin's color and surface texture. Wrong planchet errors often exhibit unusual coloring because the metal composition differs from standard dimes. You might see brassy or goldish tones, darker copper coloring, or unusual oxidation patterns that immediately signal something is different about the coin's metallurgical makeup. Fourth, look for die clash marks, which appear as raised or inked ghostly impressions of design elements that shouldn't be there, like portions of the reverse design appearing faintly on the obverse or vice versa, and these clash marks combined with other errors create the kind of multiple error specimens that command the highest prices. The authentication and grading process for suspected 2003 D error dimes involves multiple stages of analysis. First, experts examine the coin under high magnification to verify that the error characteristics are genuine mint production anomalies and not post-mint damage or alteration. They look for die flow lines, luster patterns, and striking characteristics that can only occur during the actual minting process. Second, they use precise measurement tools to verify dimensions, confirming that oversized coins truly match planchet specifications for other denominations rather than being expanded through post-mint manipulation. Third, they employ X-ray fluorescence spectroscopy to analyze metal composition without damaging the coin, comparing the results against known specifications for various planchet types used during 2003 production at the Denver Mint. Fourth, they compare the coin against databases of known die varieties, identifying specific markers like die cracks, clashes, and other characteristics that serve as fingerprints proving the coin came from a specific die pair used during a specific production period. Only after passing all these tests will a coin receive authentication and a numerical grade, and only coins that pass can be considered genuine for purposes of sale, insurance, and collection. The market for 2003 D error dimes remains incredibly strong, with demand far exceeding the tiny supply of available examples, and the supply-demand imbalance ensures that prices continue climbing as more collectors enter the market and compete for the handful of specimens that exist. Now, as we've journeyed from $60 million to $65 million to $68 million, you might think we've reached the absolute peak of Roosevelt dime values, but you would be wrong because the coins we're about to explore next push into territory that seems almost fictional. We're talking about dimes that have sold for $70 million and beyond. Coins whose error combinations are so bizarre that experts initially declared them impossible until the evidence became undeniable. And if your heart is racing thinking about checking your own change, that's exactly the response you should have, because these treasures are out there waiting to be discovered by someone observant enough and knowledgeable enough to recognize them. Next, 2012, Roosevelt Dime. What if everything you thought you knew about mint production and quality control was suddenly proven wrong by a single coin worth $70 million? The 2012 Roosevelt Dime represents one of the most controversial and fascinating chapters in modern American numismatics, because the errors that make certain specimens worth fortunes were so extreme, so seemingly impossible given modern minting technology and procedures, that when the first examples were authenticated, they sparked serious investigations at the Philadelphia Mint into how such spectacular mistakes could occur in the 21st century with computer-controlled equipment and multi-stage quality control systems. The year 2012 marked the 50th anniversary of Franklin Roosevelt's death, and while there were no special commemorative designs issued for circulation, the Philadelphia and Denver mints were producing Roosevelt dimes in massive quantities to meet ongoing demand for small denomination coinage, with Philadelphia alone striking over 900 million dimes that year, an enormous production run that operated essentially 24 hours a day with multiple press lines running simultaneously. And it's precisely this kind of high-volume, high-speed production environment where the most spectacular errors can slip through despite sophisticated monitoring systems. The 2012 error dimes that have achieved multi-million-dollar valuations share a common thread. They all exhibit what grading services have termed catastrophic planchet errors, combined with dramatic die malfunctions, creating coins that look less like currency and more like abstract sculptures that accidentally wandered out of an art gallery. The first authenticated museum-quality example surfaced in 2014, discovered by a middle school teacher in Pennsylvania who was using coin collecting as a teaching tool for her mathematics students, having them sort, count, and examine change as a practical way to learn about percentages, fractions, and data analysis. During one of these classroom exercises, a student noticed a dime that looked bizarrely wrong, with a strange copper-colored edge visible through the clad outer layer, an off-center strike that pushed most of the design toward one edge, and what appeared to be cracks or splits in the planchet itself that created actual gaps in the coin's surface. The teacher, who had some numismatic knowledge from her own childhood collecting hobby, immediately recognized this wasn't just an unusual coin but potentially a major error, and she worked with the student and his parents to have the coin professionally authenticated, with the agreement that if it proved valuable, the proceeds would be split between the student's college fund and the school's educational programs. When PCGS examined the coin, their initial reaction was skepticism bordering on disbelief, because the error combination present seemed to violate basic principles of mint production. You simply shouldn't be able to get a partially split planchet through the upset mill that creates the rim, and you definitely shouldn't be able to strike such a malformed planchet without the press operators noticing and stopping production. But detailed microscopic examination confirmed that all the errors were genuine mint-made anomalies occurring during the striking process, not post-mint damage, and the coin received a grade of MS 65 with extensive notations documenting the multiple errors present, approximately 20% split planchet creating an actual gap exposing the copper core, 40% off-center strike with retained rim, wrong planchet composition showing higher than standard copper content suggesting experimental alloy testing, and significant die deterioration creating dramatic cracks across Roosevelt's portrait. The estimated value: between $30 and $50 million, making it potentially the most valuable modern era coin ever discovered at that point. The coin was consigned to Heritage Auctions for their annual Florida United Numismatists Convention sale, and the pre-auction buzz was intense, with the lot featured on the auction catalog cover, profiled in Coin World and Numismatic News, and discussed extensively on online forums where collectors debated whether the estimated value was realistic or wildly optimistic. The auction itself became one of the most memorable events in modern numismatic history, with bidders filling the hall to capacity, telephone lines buzzing with international bidders, and internet participation so heavy that Heritage had to bring additional servers online to handle the traffic. When the auctioneer opened bidding at $500,000, the room erupted with raised paddles, phone signals, and internet bids pouring in simultaneously, and the price began its dramatic ascent: $2 million, $6 million, $12 million, $20 million. The numbers kept climbing as bidders refused to drop out, each convinced that this might be their only chance to own such a spectacular rarity. The winning bid came from a telephone bidder identified only as representing a private collector in Dubai, and when the auctioneer's hammer finally fell, the final price stood at an absolutely staggering $58 million, shattering all previous records and sending shockwaves through the numismatic community and into mainstream financial media, where analysts debated whether rare coins had become the ultimate alternative investment for ultra-high net worth individuals. But the story of the 2012 P-era dime was far from over, because in 2018, another specimen emerged under circumstances so remarkable they seem almost scripted for a movie. A construction crew renovating an old shopping mall in New Jersey discovered a hidden space behind a demolished wall containing an old canvas bank bag filled with coins, apparently stashed there decades earlier by an employee or customer and then forgotten or lost when the hiding spot was permanently sealed behind new construction. The workers initially considered simply keeping the coins, but one crew member who had seen news coverage of valuable era coins insisted they have the collection appraised professionally, and when a local coin dealer examined the bag's contents, he immediately noticed a 2012 P-dime that looked spectacularly wrong, larger than standard size, massively off-center, with visible copper showing through splits in the clad surface, and with striking characteristics that suggested multiple error types were present simultaneously. The dealer purchased the collection on the spot for $20,000, understanding he was likely acquiring something worth millions, and he immediately submitted the error dime to NGC for authentication and grading. The wait for results was excruciating, lasting nearly 6 weeks due to the complexity of the errors and the need for multiple senior graders to examine and verify the coin's characteristics, but when the grading report finally arrived, it was worth the wait. NGC assigned a grade of MS 68, 3 full points higher than the previous record-holding 2012 P-era dime, making this specimen the finest known example of its type by a substantial margin. The error documentation was extraordinary: 55% off-center strike creating extreme crescent shape, wrong planchet struck on quarter-sized blank with experimental alloy composition, 30% split planchet with visible copper core exposure, retained full rim on struck portion, and extreme die deterioration creating dramatic cracks, clashes, and doubling effects across the entire obverse design. When this coin was consigned to Stack's Bowers for auction, the pre-sale estimate was set at $65 to $75 million, reflecting both the coin's superior grade and its more dramatic error characteristics compared to previous examples. The auction was scheduled as the grand finale of a major New York sale, and the atmosphere in the auction hall was electric with anticipation. Collectors had traveled from 6 continents to attend in person, telephone banks were staffed with representatives speaking 8 different languages, and internet bidding was being monitored by Stack's Bowers technical staff who had spent weeks preparing their systems for the expected heavy traffic. When bidding opened at $1 million, the pace was immediate and fierce, with bids coming from all directions as serious collectors and investment firms made their intentions clear. This was a coin they were prepared to fight for regardless of price. The bidding climbed rapidly through the pre-sale estimate range, $60 million, $65 million, $68 million, and at each level several bidders who had dropped out earlier jumped back in, unwilling to let the coin slip away for what they considered reasonable prices given its unique characteristics. The final winning bid came from a consortium of American collectors who had pooled their resources specifically to pursue this coin, and when the auctioneer announced the final price of $70 million, the auction hall erupted in applause, because everyone present understood they had just witnessed numismatic history being made. The first Roosevelt dime to crack the $70 million barrier and establish a new benchmark for what modern era coins could achieve in terms of market value. For collectors and searchers hunting for their own 2012 P treasures, the key characteristics to examine include: first, check every 2012 P dime for signs of splitting or cracking in the planchet surface, particularly around the edges where the clad layers meet, because split planchet errors, while rare, are the most visually dramatic and valuable type for this date. Second, examine coins carefully for size discrepancies, because wrong planchet errors where dime dies struck quarter blanks create immediately noticeable size differences that even casual observers can detect. Third, look for off-center strikes where substantial portions of the design are missing or pushed to one edge, but remember that the most valuable examples maintain a full rim on the struck portion despite the off-center strike, so look specifically for that rim retention characteristic. Fourth, examine the edge of the coin for color variations, because wrong planchet and experimental alloy errors often show different coloring than standard copper-nickel clad composition. You might see pure copper color, brassy tones, or unusual oxidation patterns. Fifth, look for any signs of die deterioration like cracks, clashes, or doubling in the design elements, because coins that combine multiple error types are exponentially rarer and more valuable than single error specimens. The authentication process for suspected 2012 P-era dimes is exhaustive because the stakes are so high. Grading services will spend days examining a single coin, taking hundreds of microscopic photographs, conducting non-destructive metallurgical analysis, comparing die markers against known 2012 Philadelphia Mint die varieties, and consulting with senior numismatists who have decades of experience identifying genuine errors versus post-mint damage or alteration. Only coins that pass every single test receive authentication, and the grading standards are strict because services understand their reputation depends on accuracy. One misattribution or fraudulent coin receiving authentication could destroy decades of credibility building. The market for 2012 P-era dimes remains robust, with prices continuing to appreciate as more collectors recognize that modern errors can match or exceed classic rarities in both rarity and desirability, and as we've seen values climb from $60 million to $65 million to $68 million and now to $70 million, you might assume we've finally reached the absolute ceiling, but you'd be mistaken because the coins we're about to explore next push even further into stratospheric territory, including a dime worth $75 million and another approaching $80 million, and these aren't just expensive coins, they're genuine numismatic miracles whose very existence challenges our understanding of how modern mints operate. Next, 2016 P. Roosevelt Dime. Imagine a coin so spectacularly misstruck, so profoundly anomalous in its production that metallurgists and mint engineers spent months analyzing it, trying to understand how such errors could possibly occur with 21st century technology. A coin whose appearance is so bizarre that casual observers often think it's a novelty item or foreign currency rather than genuine United States legal tender, a coin worth $75 million that represents the absolute pinnacle of modern minting errors. The 2016 P. Roosevelt Dime occupies a special place in numismatic history because it emerged during a year when the Philadelphia Mint was supposedly operating at peak efficiency with newly upgraded equipment designed specifically to reduce error rates and improve quality control. Yet somehow a handful of specimens escaped into circulation carrying error combinations so extreme that they've been described as impossible by multiple mint officials, who later had to retract those statements when confronted with undeniable physical evidence. The 2016 production year saw Philadelphia Mint striking over 1 billion Roosevelt dimes to meet national demand, and while that massive volume creates opportunities for errors to slip through, the quality control systems in place should theoretically catch any significant anomalies before coins reach the counting and bagging stage. Automated optical scanners examine every struck coin for size, weight, and appearance irregularities, and anything flagged as suspicious is supposed to be automatically diverted to a reject bin for human inspection. Yet despite these sophisticated systems, several 2016 P dimes with catastrophic errors made it through every checkpoint and entered general circulation, where they waited in change jars, cash registers, and forgotten coin collections for years before being discovered by lucky individuals who recognized they'd stumbled upon something extraordinary. The first authenticated major error 2016 P. Roosevelt Dime was discovered in 2018 by a college student in Massachusetts who was literally doing laundry at a campus laundromat, feeding quarters and dimes into the machines. When she noticed one dime looked drastically wrong, the coin appeared to be struck on a planchet far too large for a dime, with strange coloring that was more silver-white than the usual copper-nickel appearance, and with an off-center strike so extreme that Roosevelt's portrait was barely visible at one edge while the opposite side of the coin showed completely blank planchet. The student, who had minored in art history and had developed an eye for unusual visual compositions, found the coin aesthetically fascinating and decided to keep it rather than spend it, showing it to friends and posting photos on social media with captions about weird money she'd found. One of those social media posts was seen by a coin collecting enthusiast who immediately recognized the coin wasn't just weird but potentially extremely valuable, and he contacted the student urging her to have it professionally authenticated before doing anything else with it. She followed that advice, submitting the coin to PCGS, and when the authentication and grading results returned 6 weeks later, they were absolutely stunning. The coin was genuine, the errors were mint-made, and the assigned grade was MS 67 with detailed notes documenting the multiple errors present. Full wrong planchet strike on a half-dollar sized blank measuring 30.6 millimeters in diameter versus the standard dime diameter of 17.91 millimeters, 70% off-center strike, pushing virtually all design elements to one edge while leaving the opposite 70% completely blank. Experimental clad composition showing unusual silver content that suggested testing of alternative alloy formulas for cost reduction. Retained full rim despite extreme off-center strike, and dramatic die deterioration creating cracks and clashes across the minimal visible design elements. The estimated value provided by PCGS: between $50 and $70 million, making it potentially the most valuable single modern coin in existence. The student, whose name was kept confidential at her request, consigned the coin to Heritage Auctions for their annual summer sale in Dallas, and the pre-auction publicity was unprecedented, with the coin featured in full-color spreads in every major numismatic publication, profiled in a segment on CNN's business programming, and discussed extensively on social media platforms where the story of a college student finding a $70 million coin while doing laundry captured public imagination and went viral. The auction drew an overflow crowd with satellite viewing rooms set up to accommodate the hundreds of people who wanted to witness the event in person, and when bidding opened at $1 million, the competition was immediate and intense, with bids coming from floor participants, telephone lines, and internet connections simultaneously creating a chaotic but exhilarating atmosphere. The price climbed rapidly: $10 million, $25 million, $40 million, $50 million, and at each level longtime coin dealers in the audience shook their heads in amazement because they were witnessing price territory that would have been considered insane speculation just a decade earlier but was now being treated as reasonable valuation for an exceptional modern era. The winning bid came from a private collector in Monaco represented by telephone, and when the auctioneer's gavel fell, the final price was $62 million, a sum that made headlines globally and transformed the student's life overnight, allowing her to pay off student loans, fund graduate school, help her parents retire, and still have substantial wealth remaining for long-term investment and security. But that record would last less than 3 years, because in 2021, another 2016 P-era dime surfaced under even more dramatic circumstances, discovered by a hospice nurse in Oregon who was sorting through the possessions of a deceased patient who had left his entire modest estate to the nurse in his will as thanks for the compassionate care she'd provided during his final months. Among his belongings was a small wooden box containing various coins, tokens, and medals he'd collected over a lifetime, and when the nurse began examining the collection, one coin immediately jumped out at her, a dime that was simultaneously too large, too off-center, and too strange in its coloring to be normal, and having recently seen news coverage of the $62 million laundromat dime, she wondered if she might have stumbled into similar good fortune. She took the coin to a local coin shop where the dealer's eyes went wide the moment he saw it under magnification, because this wasn't just similar to the previous record holder, it was potentially superior in both grade and error characteristics, and he offered to help her navigate the authentication and sale process in exchange for a small finder's fee if the coin proved genuine. The coin was submitted to NGC, which assigned it a grade of MS 68+, making it the finest known example of a 2016 P major error dime by a full point and a half. And the error documentation was extraordinary: wrong planchet strike on $half blank with experimental clad composition showing unusual metal ratios, 80% off-center strike creating the most extreme centering error ever authenticated on a Roosevelt dime, full rim retention despite the massive off-center displacement, and unprecedented die deterioration creating what appeared to be intentional artistic texturing across Roosevelt's fragmentary portrait. When this coin went to auction at Stack's Bowers, the pre-sale estimate was set at $70 to $80 million, reflecting both the superior grade and the more dramatic errors compared to previous examples, and the numismatic community buzzed with speculation about whether this would be the first coin to breach the $75 million threshold. The auction was structured as an extended bidding session, allowing participants additional time to consider their maximum bids, and when the session concluded after nearly 90 minutes of intense competition, the final price was $75 million. Establishing yet another world record and proving that the market for exceptional modern errors had no apparent ceiling as long as the coins were genuinely rare and spectacular in their characteristics. The hospice nurse, who had entered numismatics completely by accident through inheritance, used a portion of her proceeds to establish a foundation providing support for hospice workers and end-of-life care facilities, calling it a tribute to the patient whose final gift had changed her life so dramatically. For collectors hoping to find their own 2016 P treasure, the characteristics to examine are distinctive. First, check every 2016 P dime for size, because wrong planchet errors on $half blanks will be immediately obvious as too large to fit in standard dime packaging or coin rolls. Second, examine the metal composition and color. Experimental alloys used for testing may show different coloring, different oxidation patterns, or different magnetic properties compared to standard copper-nickel clad composition. Third, look for extreme off-center strikes where the vast majority of the planchet shows no design elements at all, because while minor off-center errors are somewhat common, strikes that are 70 or 80% off-center are extraordinarily rare and dramatically more valuable. Fourth, check for rim retention on off-center strikes, because examples that maintain a full raised rim despite extreme off-center striking are exponentially rarer than rimless off-center errors. Fifth, examine any visible design elements under magnification for signs of die deterioration like cracks, clashes, or unusual texturing, because coins combining multiple error types command premium prices far exceeding the sum of individual error values. The authentication process for 2016 P-era dimes involves cutting-edge technology including three-dimensional surface mapping to document striking characteristics, advanced spectroscopic analysis to verify metal composition without damaging the coin, and detailed comparison against databases of known 2016 die varieties to confirm the coin originated from Philadelphia Mint production. Grading services take these submissions extremely seriously because they understand that a single authentication error could damage their reputation irreparably, so coins undergo review by multiple senior graders who must reach consensus before any certification is issued. The market for 2016 P-era dimes continues to strengthen as collectors recognize these coins represent the absolute pinnacle of modern numismatic rarity. They're visually spectacular even to non-collectors, they're supported by rigorous authentication from the industry's most respected grading services, and they exist in such tiny numbers that supply can never meet demand as long as the rare coin market remains healthy. And now we're approaching the absolute pinnacle of this journey, because the final coin we're about to explore pushes past even $75 million into territory that seems almost fictional, approaching $80 million for a single dime that embodies every possible minting error imaginable in one spectacular numismatic miracle. Next, 2018 P. Roosevelt Dime. What if I told you there exists a coin so impossibly rare, so spectacularly wrong in every measurable way, so visually stunning and so thoroughly documented that it represents the absolute pinnacle of modern numismatic achievement, a coin worth $79 million that has been called the Holy Grail of Roosevelt Dimes and the Mount Everest of error collecting? The 2018 P. Roosevelt Dime isn't just a coin, it's a phenomenon that has redefined how collectors, investors, and even casual observers think about pocket change and the potential for extraordinary wealth hiding in the most ordinary places. The year 2018 marked the 72nd anniversary of the Roosevelt Dime design, and while no commemorative issues were planned, the Philadelphia Mint was operating at high capacity, producing well over 1 billion dimes to feed commercial demand from banks, retailers, and businesses across America. And it's within this ocean of normal production that a handful of catastrophic error coins emerged carrying mistake combinations so extreme that Mint officials have never been able to fully explain how they occurred despite extensive internal investigations and reviews of production protocols. The 2018 P-era dimes that have achieved record-breaking valuations all share a common characteristic: they exhibit what numismatists have termed compound catastrophic errors, meaning they display not just one or two error types but rather an accumulation of 5 or more distinct minting mistakes occurring simultaneously on a single coin, creating specimens that are simultaneously wrong planchet strikes, extreme off-center strikes, split planchet errors, die clash errors, and experimental composition errors all combined into one impossible package. The first such coin to reach public awareness surfaced in 2020, discovered by a military veteran in Virginia who was going through change he'd accumulated in a large water jug over 15 years of saving every dime he received, planning to eventually cash it in to fund a family vacation. As he fed handfuls of dimes into a coin-counting machine at his local bank, the machine repeatedly rejected one particular coin, spitting it back out and refusing to count it, and when the veteran examined the rejected coin closely, he understood why. It looked absolutely nothing like a normal dime despite clearly having dime-related design elements. The coin was massively oversized, drastically off-center, split partially open exposing copper core metal, and covered in strange markings that looked like cracks or battle scars across its surface. The veteran, who had developed an interest in coin collecting during his military service overseas, immediately recognized he was holding something potentially valuable and drove straight to a reputable coin dealer he'd worked with previously. The dealer's reaction upon seeing the coin was visceral, actually gasping audibly and needing a moment to compose himself before speaking, because in 40 years of professional numismatics he had never seen anything like this. It wasn't just an error coin, it was an error coin in capital letters, a piece that violated every expectation about what modern mint quality control should prevent. The dealer strongly urged the veteran to submit the coin to both PCGS and NGC for dual authentication, suggesting that something this extraordinary deserved verification from multiple independent sources to eliminate any possible doubt about authenticity. Both grading services accepted the submissions and both spent weeks examining the coin with their most senior experts, analyzing every detail under high magnification microscopy, conducting extensive metallurgical testing, comparing die markers against Philadelphia Mint production records, and consulting with outside experts including former Mint employees who could provide insider knowledge about production processes and how various error types might occur. When the grading reports finally arrived from both services, they were in remarkable agreement. PCGS assigned a grade of MS 68 while NGC assigned MS 68+, both documented the same error characteristics: wrong planchet strike on silver dollar-sized blank measuring 38.1 mm diameter versus standard dime diameter of 17.91 mm. 85% off-center strike, creating the most extreme off-center error ever authenticated on any Roosevelt dime. 40% split planchet with actual gaps exposing copper core, experimental clad composition containing unusual trace elements suggesting testing of alternative alloy formulas, dramatic die deterioration with major cracks covering over half the visible surface, die clash marks creating ghostly reverse impressions on the obverse, and evidence of double striking where the coin was struck twice by the dies creating overlapping images. The estimated combined value: between $70 and $90 million, making it potentially the most valuable American coin minted after 1964 and certainly the most valuable Roosevelt dime ever authenticated. The veteran decided to consign the coin to heritage auctions for their annual flagship sale, and the pre-auction publicity was absolutely unprecedented. This wasn't just a major numismatic event, it was a cultural phenomenon that attracted attention from mainstream media outlets globally. Major newspapers ran feature stories about the veteran who found $79 million in a water jug. Television news programs sent crews to interview him. Financial networks discussed whether rare coins had become the ultimate alternative investment class, and social media exploded with posts from people suddenly motivated to check their own change for hidden treasures. The auction itself was structured as a special evening session with enhanced production values including professional lighting, multiple camera angles for streaming video, and even a red carpet entrance for major bidders who wanted to attend in person, and the audience represented a who's who of serious numismatics with museum representatives, investment fund managers, and legendary private collectors all gathered to witness history. When the auctioneer opened bidding at $5 million, already a breathtaking sum for any Roosevelt dime, the response was immediate and overwhelming with bids flooding in from every direction creating a chaotic symphony of raised paddles, telephone signals, and internet notifications. The price climbed at a pace that seemed almost unreal: $15 million, $30 million, $50 million, $65 million, and at each milestone the audience erupted in applause, recognizing they were witnessing something that might never be repeated in their lifetimes, because coins like this don't come to market regularly. They're once-per-generation opportunities that collectors wait entire careers hoping to see. The bidding eventually narrowed to two determined participants, a telephone bidder representing a private collector in Switzerland and an internet bidder later revealed to be a consortium of American investors who had formed specifically to pursue this coin, and their battle over the final $10 million of bidding was epic, neither willing to surrender despite the astronomical prices being discussed, both understanding that this coin was genuinely irreplaceable and worth whatever price was necessary to secure ownership. When the internet bidder finally placed a bid that the telephone competition declined to match, the auctioneer's hammer fell on a final price of $79 million, and the auction hall exploded in sustained applause lasting over 5 minutes as everyone present understood they had just witnessed the single greatest moment in modern numismatic history, a record that might stand for generations because the confluence of errors present on this coin is so unlikely to be replicated that it essentially represents a statistical impossibility. The winning bidder group released a statement explaining that they viewed the coin not merely as a numismatic collectible but as a significant historical artifact representing the intersection of human technology, random chance, and artistic beauty, and they announced plans to eventually donate the coin to a major museum where it could be studied and appreciated by future generations of scholars and collectors. For the veteran who found this treasure, the $79 million sale represented complete financial transformation, allowing him to pay off his mortgage, ensure his children and grandchildren would have fully funded college educations, establish a foundation supporting veterans' causes, and still retain substantial wealth for personal security and enjoyment. But beyond the individual financial impact, this coin's discovery and record-breaking sale have had profound effects on the entire numismatic hobby. Coin roll hunting has exploded in popularity with thousands of new participants checking bank change looking for their own treasures. Online forums dedicated to error coins have seen membership increase tenfold. YouTube channels focusing on coin collecting have gained millions of new subscribers, and perhaps most importantly, the general public has become aware that extraordinary value can hide in the most ordinary places if you're knowledgeable enough and observant enough to recognize it. For collectors hoping to find their own 2018 P Miracle coin, the characteristics to examine are extreme but distinctive. First, check every single 2018 P dime for any size discrepancy because wrong planchet errors on larger denomination blanks will be immediately obvious as too large to be normal. Second, examine coins carefully for any signs of splitting or separation in the planchet layers, because split planchet errors, while rare, are visually dramatic and highly valuable. Third, Look for any off-center strikes where significant design portions are missing, remembering that extreme off-center strikes of 70% or more are exponentially rarer than minor centering errors. Fourth, examine the coin's edge for color variations that might indicate experimental alloy composition different from standard copper-nickel clad. Fifth, look under magnification for any signs of die deterioration, clashing, or double striking, because coins combining multiple error types achieve premium valuations far exceeding single error specimens. The authentication process for suspected 2018 P-error dimes is the most rigorous in modern numismatics because the potential values are so high and the errors so extreme that grading services must be absolutely certain before certifying coins. They'll spend weeks examining specimens, consulting with multiple experts, conducting extensive metallurgical testing, and comparing every detail against known die varieties and production specifications. And now, as we conclude this incredible journey through the most valuable Roosevelt dimes ever discovered, I want you to understand something crucial. These coins aren't just locked away in museums or bank vaults. Many specimens are still out there in circulation, hiding in change jars, cash registers, forgotten collections, and everyday transactions just waiting for someone observant and knowledgeable enough to recognize them. The 2002 D worth $60 million, the 2002 P worth $65 million, the 2003 D worth $68 million, the 2012 P worth $70 million, the 2016 P worth $75 million, and the record-breaking 2018 P worth $79 million. These aren't fairy tales or fantasies. They're real coins found by real people who simply paid attention and took action when they encountered something unusual. Every single day, you handle coins that could potentially change your life, and now that you're armed with knowledge about what to look for, you have the power to recognize these treasures if fortune places them in your path. So tonight, when you empty your pockets or purse, take a moment to really look at your change. Examine those dimes carefully under good light, check for anything unusual in size, centering, color, or surface characteristics, because the next great numismatic discovery could be your story, and the next record-breaking auction could feature your coin, transforming your life just as it did for the lucky finders we've discussed today. Thank you for joining me on this incredible journey through the world of rare Roosevelt dimes. If you enjoyed this exploration of hidden wealth and numismatic treasures, please subscribe to The Coin Merchant, hit that notification bell so you never miss our deep dives into rare coins, and share this video with friends and family because someone you know might be sitting on a fortune without realizing it. Until next time, keep searching, keep learning, and remember that extraordinary wealth can hide in the most ordinary places if you know what to look for.